Welcome. I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you do me a favor, please subscribe to whoever you're listening. Please subscribe to whoever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. So we're here, guys. We are in, it's March Madness is here. And I wanted to dedicate this episode to March Madness. I wanted to talk about both the men's side of the bracket and the women's side of the bracket. I understand that NFL free agency is going crazy right now. I understand Tom Brady just unretired. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about that on Saturday. I wanted to dedicate this episode to basketball. I want to dedicate it to college basketball. So what I did was I brought a couple of my good friends to this episode to talk college basketball. I got my man Carl. He knows more. He watches more college basketball than I think anybody in the world. I wanted to bring him on to get his perspective on the men's side and who I think he has winning and this, that, and the third. Also wanted to bring Jasmine Brown. She's a contributor. Highlight her. I wanted to see her opinion and on the women's side. We both have Maryland tied, so I wanted to get her opinion on Maryland and how far I think Maryland can go. And Tykera Carter. She's a color analyst for a lot of college games. She does sideline reporting for the G League. I wanted to get her opinion as well. I also wanted to get both Jasmine and Tykera's opinion on how women basketball players are being covered as much or compared to how women are being covered. So I want to appreciate all of them for coming on, and I'm gonna start with Carl. Without further ado, here's my interview with Carl. So Carl, man, we are here. There's some playing games going on right now, but we pretty much know the group of 64 that's in, or the round of 64 that's in the men's tournament. And of course, Gonzaga is the overall number one seed. They've pretty much been the most consistent throughout the entire season, even though they haven't really played too many people. But the number ones, of course, is Gonzaga. I think Baylor, Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, and Kansas. In your opinion, let's start with the West. Gonzaga, Duke, Texas Tech. To me, Michigan State. Yeah, I forgot about that. To me, this is I could be wrong. I'll ask you, but this is a 2 to 3 team region, in my opinion. To me, it's I have either Gonzaga, Duke, or Texas Tech. I don't really see Arkansas scoring wise keeping up. We talked about off my Michigan State's a little too inconsistent. UConn's been a surprise this whole season for me, but I just don't see them. They haven't really played too many people. So when we look at the West, how do you think this region is going to shape out?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer that question. I got something else too. So I think the best team in this region is actually Duke. As much as I hate to say it, because I don't like Duke, but Duke, I think, beat Gonzaga earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Duke has, to me, the best player in the draft in Paolo Banchero. Some might argue Jabari, some might argue Chet. Gonzaga, I'm not falling for Gonzaga ever again after last year. After they got blown out in the championship, I'm never falling for it again. So they got shooters, AJ Griffin. Mark Williams is actually playing well as a big man for Duke. They can match height with Gonzaga. Drew Timme came up short in the tournament last year. I don't know how he'll do again this year. I got Duke taking it, as much as I hate to say it, like I said, especially with my team being in the Western Michigan State. I do agree with Michigan State being inconsistent, but have so many droughts where we just can't score. And on top of that, we're a bad turnover team, so you can't compound the two and expect to go far. As far as your UConn point, upset alert. I have New Mexico State with Teddy Buckets beating UConn first round. I actually have New Mexico State maybe even going to the Sweet 16.
New Mexico, why? I need to know
Teddy
why
Buckets.
You have New Mexico. Okay.
Teddy Buckets, Western Athletic Conference Player of the Year. His brother, Timmy Allen, bro, they can put the ball in the basket. And in the tournament, it's about players that can put the ball in the basket. I know UConn has a nice little mob at RJ Cole, Tyrese Martin, Adama Sanogo, who might be a force down low, but New Mexico State is not a bad team. Like, you might see the mid-major and see New Mexico State, like, wow, who they beat. they had a pretty nice little Western Athletic Conference with Seattle, who had Darion Trammell, who's like third in the league in steals, averaging like 19 points a game. They had, I believe they beat Grand Canyon in the finals, who was in the tournament last year. So New Mexico State is a really good team that I think people should watch out for. So that's my upset alert.
So let me. I'll hit two of your points. Duke. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm a North Carolina fan. I'm being as unbiased as possible. I've seen Duke, in my opinion, suffers from the same thing Kentucky suffers from. As far as if they ain't shooting, if they can't shoot, like if Banchero's not on, if Moore's not on, they're not hitting nothing. We saw that. Now people say it was nerves, but we saw that the last game against North Carolina, Coach K's last game. They were on fire in the first half, and they couldn't shoot to say they liked the second half. And of course, North Carolina came back and ultimately won. We saw that against Virginia Tech in
ACC champions in the final.
They couldn't hit to say they life. And I just feel while Banchero's great and he's going to be a high draft pick, I just feel I don't know if he offensively wise is good enough to carry this team. And for some reason, Wendell Moore, he's like he's good enough to be a top draft pick, and he probably will, but he just comes and goes sometimes, in my opinion. Like sometimes he'll have incredible games, incredible moments, but then there's other times he kind of suffers from who's that? Like that player where you look like, oh shoot, I didn't even know he was still on the floor. There's stuff like that. And to me, you can't do that in the tournament. You cannot do that. You're going to need consistent play, and I just don't think that Duke is the most or as consistent to. Not saying they're not going to. I mean, clearly I have been beating CSU. Fullerton, but I just once you start getting to the Sweet 16s and Elite Eights, it's going to be tough because we know the game plan for Duke. If they're not scoring, their offense or their defense kind of runs on their offense. If their offense ain't there, their defense ain't going to be there, and that's. I guess I'll ask you: Do you feel the same way? I just feel Duke's lack of offense at times can really do them in.
The only thing I disagree with is Paolo Banchero being good enough offensively. I think Paolo Banchero can, but he can score from any angle, he can score anywhere on the court. He can take you out perimeter score. He can score down low. I think Paolo Banchero is that good. Like I said, when it comes to the tournament, you need that one guy who, no matter what, you can go to and get a bucket. Hence the New Mexico State point. Mm-hmm. I do feel like that. The only pushback I have with Duke is if they run into like a Texas Tech, who is really great defensively. Yeah. They hold teams to like real low numbers. But Texas Tech is another team that really don't have a score, like somebody that can take over. They have the UTEP transfer, Bryson Williams, down low, who I really liked while he was at UTEP. Mm-hmm. But as far as like a bucket getter with Texas Tech, maybe you can go, I think he's Terrence Shannon, maybe. But Gonzaga, like I said, I just can't do it. I will never fall for Gonzaga again. I'm not doing it. And so, like I said, that's why I got Duke winning the reason. Do I think Michigan State can upset Duke if that second round matchup happens? I think it's possible because we have the length and we have the size for Duke with Bingham, Julius Marble, who's been playing really well lately. Max Christie is a phenomenal freshman. Tyson Walker is a closer. I don't know how severe that injury was against Purdue. I think that was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday. He sustained the injury against Purdue. I don't know how severe it was. I didn't look it up. I like AJ Hogarth. He's a tough point guard. Go to the cup. I wish he could shoot better, but sometimes you just can't have it all with Michigan State recruits. I think we can get them, but my pick for that reason is Duke. I think Paolo is good enough to carry Duke out of that region. Now, when you go against better number ones like a Baylor or like an Arizona, or even a number two like Kentucky, that might cost them.
Well, you're not gonna like my upset of this bracket of this region.
I love Davidson too. Is that it?
It's Dave.
I love Davidson.
It kind of goes back to your point as far as Michigan State goes through offensive droughts like nobody else in this region. Like And now they are bigger than Davidson. They have better name players, but Davidson's been on. Davidson caught fire at the best
Oh
moment.
no, they're an offensive juggernaut.
Yes.
Davidson's an offensive juggernaut. They got Lee, the shooter. They got Foster Lawyer, the Michigan State transfer. I wish we could have kept him, but we ain't had not enough spots, unfortunately.
So
they got Luka, the A10 Player of the Year, Big Luka, who I love a lot. Ponja, number 3. They are an offensive juggernaut, but can they stop us defensively is the question.
That's the biggest thing. Can they stop you guys defensively? Can they stop you guys from getting to the paint? Can they stop, especially because one thing that Davidson does give up at times are open threes. You guys are going to have to knock them down. You guys, that is Michigan State, for people that's listening. You're going to have to knock them down. So that could be my upset of the West bracket. Now every year there's always one number one that just gets put through a gauntlet. There's always one number one that they always say, yeah, they got the raw end of the deal. In my opinion, that is Baylor. Baylor in the East. I mean, you look, you got Kentucky, you got North Carolina, you got Marquette, you got Texas, you got Purdue, you got Murray State, who's on fire. Do you agree with me by saying that Baylor probably
San Francisco not bums either. San Francisco can win that game. I think actually San Francisco is favored.
Hell, I don't see them winning at all. But Norfolk State is a squad too. So do you think that Baylor, in my opinion, I think Baylor has the toughest region by far. Do you agree with me in that sense?
I can see what you're saying, but to me, in all honesty, this whole tournament just seems like a gauntlet. Like I was watching the Selection Sunday bracket show on Sunday, and I was thinking like this tournament is going to be so amazing because it's so many good matchups. It's so many good teams in different regions. Now, to your point of the hardest region, I don't remember the regions off top, so I can't really answer that. But from what you're saying, that region is like a gauntlet because Texas is a really good offensive team, coached by Chris Beard, who left Texas Tech. They have Marcus Carr, the transfer, Christian Bishop, the transfer from Creighton, Timmy Allen, the transfer from Utah. Devin Askew, he gets Burner in there, the transfer from Kentucky, but I don't really see him that big of a factor. Then they still have the guys they kept, like Courtney Ramey, Andrew Jones. Yeah. So that team offensively is really good, but they do suffer from turnovers, and they also can hit droughts. I chose Baylor to win it all.
Maybe all early as far in the year. All the tour. Okay. Oh.
I chose Baylor to win it all earlier in the year before like the injuries and things like that. I really like LJ Cryer. James Akinjo is a pretty good point guard. I've been watching him since he was at Georgetown. I like Matthew Moyer. He brings the experience from being on the team last year. Cryer was on the team last year, but he barely played. So did Adam Flagler came off the bench last year, if I remember correctly. So he also has that championship experience. Jeremy Shohan has been coming on lately for Baylor, as well as Flo Thamba. Flo Thamba, as soon as Jonathan Natatu got hurt, his game rose tremendously.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. How far can my North Carolina go? In fact, let me say this, and I'm gonna be as honest as possible. I can see North Carolina either losing the first round to Marquette. This is yet the second year in a row that we're 8th seed. Second year in a row we're playing a Wisconsin team. Second year in a row that we can get, because Wisconsin last year destroyed us. I could see us, and I could see North Carolina either losing in the round of 84 or 64, or I can also see them going to the Sweet 16, and I'm gonna tell you why. North Carolina, to me, is the hardest team and the most frustrating team to root for right now, and to I guess understand. And I say that because we know North Carolina knows what they are. They're not the best offensive team. Yes, you have Caleb Love, who we thought was going to make a big leap from last year to this year. He did not. RJ Davis has had his moments, like we talked about off mic, but no one really thinks that's as sustainable. Bangkok, I think he should have been ACC Player of the Year, but
that's what a lot of people were saying.
But it is what it is. But in my opinion, he was the best player in the ACC. However, he's a big man. You need a guard to give him the ball. Brady Manick has been going crazy from three probably since the last few weeks of the year. But he don't play. I'm not gonna say he don't. He's not the best. He's kind of like Rudy Gobert in the sense of if you bring him out the paint, he's not the best defender. Because you know. But I say all that to say, North Carolina, man, they are. I call them at least this year the Jacqueline Hyde team because they can look incredible, like they did against Duke, the second half of Coach K's last game, like they did the last part of the season. But then they can go, they can look like one of the worst teams in college at times because they don't have scores. They don't have. I talked to a young lady named Tykera Carter, and she said, which was true. If you look at almost every single March Madness, they're dominated by guards. Hell, even look like Davon Love and I forgot his name. They're dominated by guards. Hell, Jalen Suggs was going crazy last year.
Yeah, you got last year with Baylor, Jared Butler, and Mitchell.
I don't see. I don't trust Leaky Black's offense clearly. Now his defense is great, but his offense, no. I don't. It's hard for me to trust Caleb Love because he's been so inconsistent. It's hard for me to trust RJ Davis because he's been so inconsistent. So North Carolina's usual, I guess, call to fame, you can say, is their bigs and how they dominate the offensive glass, how they dominate the paint. But all we have is Baycott because Brady Manning is a 3-point shooter. So I can see it. It's just it's tough for me to pick. So I want to know your opinion, but it's tough for me to pick North Carolina going because I could see them if they beat a Marquette. I can see them, matching up well with Baylor. But then I can also see them losing to Marquette because they can't shoot to save their life. And we've seen that like when they played Virginia Tech. Now, yes, Virginia Tech ultimately won the ACC championship, but they get blitzed. It's either they get blitzed or it's a good game. Like if they get blitzed, it's over. Virginia Tech was like up 15 quickly. So how do you feel about North Carolina?
All right, so I think, like you said, I think y'all can lose the first game to Marquette because Marquette can actually score the ball, and they have the bigs. They have a big that can match with Baycott, the Oklahoma transfer, Kirk Caruth. Mm-hmm. I like Justin Lewis a lot. I don't know if who y'all will put on Justin Lewis to stop him because he's like the 4-2, and if he takes Brady Manick outside, which he can do, it's gonna be a long night for Brady Manick. Yeah, Daryl Morsell, the transfer from Maryland, he's a great defensive guard, so they'll probably put him more so on Caleb Love than RJ Davis, just so he won't, because Caleb Love get hot. Watch out. Yeah. So they'll probably do that so he can't get hot. I like Tyler Kolek, who runs the offense. He's a shooter. They have other nice little role players. So Marquette could beat y'all. Mm-hmm. It depends, like you said, when North Carolina shows up. If the North Carolina that shows up towards the latter half of the season, who are starting to figure it out a little bit, if RJ Davis and Caleb Love can get it going, y'all could very much so win that game. But if early North Carolina shows up, which we're in danger of not making the tournament early on the year, it's over. Like you said, it's just another Wisconsin team that ran right through y'all to go to the next round. It's plain and simple. So with that being said, to make a pick, because I'm gonna have to do this for the bracket, I'm gonna go with the more consistent Marquette. Because of consistency.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that because I taking out all my fandom, taking out all my bias. It's very challenging. I kind of look at North Carolina the same way I look at Kentucky on the women's side. It's like, yeah, Kentucky did win the SEC championship, but
took South Carolina down.
They've been so inconsistent. I don't know. But I also, what is your opinion on UCLA? Like how good do you think UCLA can be in this tournament?
Oh man, so UCLA got some good pieces. I don't think last year was a fluke because they have basically the same roster and they're just as good. Mm-hmm. I think it might have took them a long time for them to click. and get it together. But that nucleus of Tiger Campbell, Johnny Juzang, and Jaime Jaquez is still together. And they're still with, like, I think overall a 7 seed. And I believe they just won the Pac-12 tournament. So, yeah, because they beat USC. Did they?
Yeah, they lost to
I can't remember.
Arizona. They lost to Arizona.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yep. You're right. USC was a semifinal. Then they lost to Arizona. You're right. But they made it to the final of the Pac-12 tournament. I think they're a really good team. I told my friend earlier in the year I didn't have them winning it all because I don't think they're good enough down low. Again, Jaime Jaquez makes some crazy shots and crazy moments that could be daggers to hearts. Like, oh my God, you need a bucket. Oh, he put up a crazy shot. How did that go in? He can do that.
He does that.
Johnny Juzang can score. Yeah. They have a shooter, Jules Bernard. But
my question is, like I said, what happens? And we've seen it. What happens when you take out Juzang? What happens when you take out the guard? It's just like it's like they don't really have a third punch that's reliable. They have good piece, but
Tiger Campbell is good. Tiger Campbell has his moments in the clutch if they go away where he can step up. Yeah, I will give Tiger Campbell that. I don't think I have them in the Final Four. I think they can be. I think their ceiling is maybe Elite Eight as a ceiling, but they're a really good team, though. I can't take that away from them.
How far do you think Kentucky can go?
That was who I had. Okay, I'm glad you brought it up. Before the season started, when Coach K was doing the whole transfer portal game, I said flat out he won the transfer portal. She Wade, National Player of the Year contestant. Kellen Grady, the shooter from Davidson. CJ Frederick, who's not even playing this year, with another transfer from Iowa. And Severe Wheeler, who led the SEC in assists last year with Georgia, were all great pickups in the transfer portal. Then you add on Ty Washington, who was a 5-star guard. And you have still Jacob Toppin. You still have... Oh, no. My bad. I'm wrong. Davion Mintz is cool. He brings senior leadership. They have a really nice roster. They need that roster to stay intact, however. They can't have a freakish Severe Wheeler injury or a freakish Ty Washington injury, which has happened twice already this season. If they lose those guys, their season's over. I think Kentucky's good enough to go Final Four.
And it goes back to what I said about Duke. And we saw that in the SEC championship, or in SEC semifinals.
No, Tennessee. Oh yeah, you're right. Tennessee first, actually. No.
In the semifinals, when Kentucky is not hitting shots, they are. I'm not gonna say garbage because they got homeboy in the paint, but they ain't doing nothing, and it's bad.
I have my only pushback is Tennessee was playing really, 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 really great ball to like SEC conference to now. Tennessee has been playing great ball. Tennessee has a couple freshmen that are really nice. They have John Fulkerson with senior leadership, who's actually really good. They have, I'm going to mess up his first name, I'm not going to say it. Vescovi, the shooter, the foreign shooter. Yeah. They got talent. Tennessee is a really good team. So I won't let that game cloud my judgment. But like I said, Final Four, man. I think that's my ceiling for Kentucky's Final Four. So I won't say he'll win it all.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I won't say that.
Let's go to the South. Of course, the number one team in this one is Arizona. We have Villanova, Tennessee. To me, the most faulty number 4 of all time in Illinois. I don't even got to ask because I remember what you said, but tell me why you have the upset, which is Loyola Chicago beating Ohio State.
Okay. Loyola, great defensive team. Like, I mean, great defensive team. That's always been their DNA, even with Porter Moser was there coaching. So now Drew Valentine, shout out Drew, Valentine coaching there now. Ohio State, yes, they have Isa Liddell. They got Michi Johnson. But they are not a consistent scoring team as well. And Loyola's used to playing those low-scoring, grind-them-out games. Plus, we've also seen Ohio State get upset by Oral Roberts last year. We've seen Ohio State kind of like not show up before. So
Gotcha.
I think Loyola can take them out the game. We're seeing a Loyola team beat Illinois, even though they don't have the same big man Cameron Kirkwood. They still got Lucas Williamson, the guard, hell of a defender.
Mhm.
They still got him in that leadership. I just think Loyola has what it takes to beat Ohio State.
All right, I'm gonna need you to take your Michigan State fandom. I'm gonna need you to take that hat
It's not
off.
even that.
I'm gonna need you to take that hat off when I ask this next question, and I'll start.
Oh, I know what's coming.
So I look at Michigan kind of the same way I look at North Carolina. Not saying that it's a good enough team, but to me, Michigan went into the season. A lot of people went to the season, like the poll people. They had them as like a number 1 seed at one time. Number 4. I apologize, number 4 seed. Now, of course, I don't know. It's been just underachievement. There's been a lot of injuries. There's, we know about homie mushing people. It has not been the season for Michigan, but however, they find themselves at the 11th seed, and I think that to me is my upset. If we talk about ranking, my upset is I think Michigan is going to beat Colorado State. I think Michigan played their best basketball coming into this. Like, they played the best basketball at this point. Now, no, they didn't win the conference championship, but they're playing their best basketball. And then you get Juwan Howard back. I don't know how far I can take them. I don't know how far I'm confident in saying they can go, but I am confident that is my upset, at least for the South region, and that's Michigan, Colorado State. So if you can, taking off your Michigan State fandom, how far do you think Michigan can go?
I'm leaving it on for a second. I'm taking shots. Michigan had the number 1 recruiting class. Fumble. Number 4. And I think number 4 in the country to start the year. Yeah. Fumble.
Yes.
Played us. Lost by 18. Granted, they beat us by like 18 when we went to their house, but and lost by 18 to us. Mm-hmm. It was up 17 to Indiana in the tournament. Fumble. Yes. This team will fumble. And you're right. They played really good basketball the last 5 games of the season. Mm-hmm. You know who wasn't there the last 5 games of the season? Juwan Howard. So
you're saying that
you know who was there when they fumbled that 17-point lead? Juwan Howard. I'm not saying that Juwan Howard's a bad coach, mm-hmm. but what I am saying is I don't know this team specifically. I don't know what's up with him and the team, because you see when Michigan had Juwan Howard, I believe last year or the year before last, they started off 9-0, won the battle for Atlantis, mm-hmm. looked really good. And I hate to say it because I hate Michigan. But they looked really good. They looked like a championship team. I think that was last year. Go to the Elite 8, lose to UCLA. Now you bring in the number 1 recruiting class, all these young guys, you bring in these transfers, and you don't look even close to what you looked last year.
And you had some players. You had, what's his name that came back? It's
Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah. It's so
you had Hunter come back. You had Eli Brooks come back, who was really good for y'all. I mean, you lose Livers, but I mean, Livers wasn't even there for the tournament run. He was hurt. Yeah. So I don't know. But to answer your question about the Colorado State game, Colorado State can be in danger because David Roddy, as great as he is, won Mountain West Player of the Year, he's undersized as a big when you go to like a Michigan, or like when you play against a Purdue, or when you're playing against other teams who have not better bigs, but bigger bigs who are also skillful. Like Kofi Coburn in Illinois and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So he might have his work cut out for him. But they do have good guards with Charlie Moore and Isaiah Stevens. I like those 2 guards for Colorado State a lot. It's going to be a good game because Colorado State is a hell of a defensive team, mm-hmm. and they won't allow as many open threes for Michigan, I believe, as most teams do. Yeah. So Michigan will have to probably attack the paint, which they have no problem with for Hunter Dickinson, to be honest. He has no problem attacking the paint. And the other freshman, Diabate, mm-hmm. they have no problem attacking the paint. But I think Colorado State can win that game. And to go to your upset point, yes, by numbers, like you said, it's an upset. But I don't even think Colorado State is actually favored in the game. I think they're underdogs.
Yeah, they are, which doesn't make – well, I guess it makes sense as far as the strength of schedule, whatever. But, yeah. Quick question, quickly. Who do you think can go further, Houston or Illinois?
Houston. Oh, no. Houston.
Okay.
I like both teams, but you say quickly.
I don't like Illinois. I like Kofi, but I don't like Illinois. I just think Illinois.
You like Trent Frazier and Andre Cabello?
Yo, it goes back to UCLA jump, bro. Like they're good, and they're
Frazier's clutch and Cabello.
He's clutch, but there are and you watch them a lot. There are games where they just like they look terrible. I'm just like, all right. Like
Cabello more so was in out the lineup due to, I don't know. It was sometimes injury, then I'm like, sometimes like, what the hell? Where is Cabello? Like,
that's what
why is he not playing?
And
Trent Frazier, I would definitely give you. It's times I'm like, Trent, come on, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like you're better than this.
Like, dude, like Kofi's a monster, but it's just, I just Houston plays such a quick pace, they have a rugged quickness to them. It's like
and they're also another crazy defensive team,
and they're better defensively this year than they were last year. Now, of course, they don't have the scores that they did last year, but they're tough.
Marcus Sasser got injured though. That's a big part of it.
That is huge. That's definitely huge. Let's go to the Midwest, which is Kansas, Auburn, Iowa, UCLA, or no, USC, Wisconsin. You talked about Kentucky. You said you felt Kentucky won the transfer portal. I think I agree with you as far as overall they won the transfer portal, but I think Auburn won the transfer player.
I know why.
And I think.
Go ahead, do it, bro. Let the name out. Go ahead. I know it hurts. I know it hurts.
I'm not gonna say it. I'm just
go ahead.
It sucks, bro. It sucks. He
was right there.
It was right there, and chose Auburn. And the thing about it was, where was this last year? That's all. Where was this, Herschel? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like I get the sense of, because you can look at Jabari Smith, who he was playing well in Georgia, but he wasn't playing like this. I guess change of scenery helps, but like,
man, he was like second in the country in blocks. Yeah, a triple double with blocks one game.
Triple double. Like, come on, where was this? We not that far. All right,
you gotta say his name, man.
I'm gonna just say this to say I think that I don't that man. That frustrates me, bro. Because imagine
Kessler Walker. For those who don't know,
imagine Kessler Walker, who was with North Carolina. For people that don't know, Kessler Walker was with North Carolina last year. Did absolutely nothing for us. Like absolutely. I don't know if he was. There was injury, I think, the beginning of the year, but he didn't really do much for us at all. He goes to Auburn and having one of the greatest statistical seasons in college basketball history. And I'm like, and he only stayed with us for 1 year, then entered the transfer portal. Like, imagine. No, I'm not even gonna keep. So I'm gonna just say this. To me, this is while I do think Baylor has the toughest region, I think that this is the number one that is in Kansas that I fear the most could lose. And that's because, I mean, I think honestly, because they lost in the SEC tournament, that's why they kind of got Auburn. That's kind of why they got bumped down to the two side. But I think that Auburn should have been the number one in this region.
I agree.
And I think, yes, Mobley at USC, he's good, but I don't know if I don't know how he'll be in the tournament, especially without his brother. Because Evan Mobley was going crazy last year.
Yeah.
Providence is cool, but they're kind of the smaller guards ish. Iowa, to me, they kind of feel like a better Davidson, but that's, I mean,
they hot.
Yeah, they're hot right now. I just think the biggest, I don't really trust Wisconsin. I just think the biggest, the best team in the Midwest region, in my opinion, is Auburn, not Kansas. What say you?
I'm agreeing. I think it's Auburn too. I think Auburn's really good. Now, I think Auburn hit like a little rough patch later in the season, which is probably the worst time to hit one.
Yes.
But I think it's Bruce Pearl, right? Bruce Pearl will get them together. Bruce Pearl took I don't want to say a worse team to make it seem like the team that he took to the Final Four wasn't good, but this is a better team than what he took to the Final Four a couple years ago and lost, which he might have got cheated against Virginia.
For sure got cheated, but I just my problem with Auburn, I think that the only thing that scares me about Auburn is their guards are hit and miss.
For sure.
And that to me is that's if you look at all of their losses, it's because I'm not going to put it all on them, but their guards do not play well. They are undersized and they do take some bad shots at times.
Oh my God. Does Wendell Green and KD Johnson take bad shots at times?
So it's like, yes, you have a arguably top 5 player in Jabari Smith, but it's like, again, the tournament is a guard. Shouts out to Tykera Carter. The tournament is a guard-driven tournament. Like, you're gonna go as far. Not saying your guard has to be the best player, but if your guard is lacking, it shows. I.e., last year when Mitchell played pretty much the best he could ever play for Baylor, and they destroyed Gonzaga.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the only thing that scares me about Auburn. But when you have Herschel, when you have Jabari, it's to me that's and
you gotta say his name right, man. I know what he did. Say his name right.
When you have Herschel Walker,
Kessler, whatever. You keep saying the running back.
Oh, I did say what? Yeah, I'm not saying his name, bro.
Come on! Oh my God.
I'll ask you, what do you think Kansas' biggest weakness is?
Honestly, and this might sound crazy, and I'm gonna ask you this first before I answer this, which is kind of gonna give away my answer. Do you think that David McCormick regressed?
Oh, for sure. I think they built the team around him, and I think, of course, Ojale, like that, he was good, but I don't think that yeah, for sure. I think he regressed mightily.
I think he regressed a lot. Yes, him and Jalen Wilson. Oh my God, did Jalen Wilson regress?
I going into it, bringing them back. I thought that they would be the clear cut number one.
Yeah.
But no, and Walker Kessler is going to have a field day.
Say it right, man.
That's the name, isn't it?
Walker, man.
It's Walker Kessler.
Whatever, Jay, you got it.
So, like I said, man, and I'm giving him props. He's arguably been the best player in college basketball. He's been in that discussion. I'll give it to him. And that's why I have Auburn coming out of that region, honestly. And I guess that's gonna advance the point. Who was your Final Four?
All right. So again, I would have to look at my phone real quick because I don't remember the brackets. Mm-hmm. I do. Auburn is with, like you said, Kansas. Auburn is the 2, so I do have Auburn coming out of that one. Not gonna lie to you, I did not watch a lot of Arizona this year because I be falling asleep at night sometimes, man. I be tired. I be tired from work. Arizona be getting late night games. I can't do it, man. I used to be able to do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting old. I don't want to say Duke out the West. Oh, it hurts. It hurts. I'm gonna have to say Duke out the West as much as it hurts. It really hurts to say that. I'm gonna have Baylor out the East. I'm gonna stick with my guns there. That leaves the South, right?
Yes.
Who's in the South? I know
Arizona, Villanova, Tennessee, Houston, Illinois, Seton Hall, TSU.
All right, can we talk about Villanova for a second?
We can.
Villanova, good team, good defensive team.
They shouldn't have been number 2, by the way. They should not have been number 2 seed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they got that because they won the Big East tournament. Honestly, I thought Tennessee should have probably got it over them.
That's what even though they didn't win it, I felt that way too.
Yeah. Villanova is so hit and miss. They either lose in the first round or go to the Final Four and may or may not win it all. That being said, I'm gonna go Tennessee. I'm gonna go Tennessee. I think taking that L to No. No, they won it all.
Tennessee won, yeah.
Won it all. Yeah. Why am I tripping?
They beat Texas
Tennessee won
A&M.
it all. They're playing hot. Mm-hmm. They have good guards. Ziegler, bro, do not get me started on how to say his name. I know his last name is Ziegler, the guard from New York.
I know you're talking about.
Kennedy Chandler, I want to say the other guard name is. Like I said, you have the senior leadership, John Ferguson. You got Muscovy. I'm gonna go Tennessee out that reason. Just strictly because I haven't watched that much Arizona. I know they've been playing well, but I didn't see it for myself a lot, so I can't really call it.
Okay, so your Final Four is Duke, Tennessee, Auburn, and Baylor.
And quick disclaimer. I love college basketball. It's so unpredictable. So if I get all four wrong, please don't kill me.
Trust me, you might hear my picks and be like, what? I have my Final Four is Gonzaga, because I just think I think when they match up against Duke, they have the best player in Chet Holmgren.
I like Paolo over
Chet. I like him, but I'm the Chet's ability to I think he's a better 3-point shooter, and I think that's where I'm going to lie on that one. I have Arizona. To me, they have Benedict Mathurin.
Don't get me pronounced. I seen the name. I don't know how to pronounce it.
He's incredible. They have Kerr Kesra. He's
out. I don't know if he's out, but I know he did sustain an injury.
Yeah, he did sustain an injury, so he might not be there. But they still have they still have
Christian Coloco. Yeah. I do remember Christian Coloco from years past.
Yes, and Umar Balo. He's He's good. So I have Arizona. I have Auburn. I just think they have Auburn, and I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with upset. Actually, I'm gonna go with I'll say North Carolina. I'm gonna go with Purdue.
Ooh, okay.
I'm gonna go with Purdue.
Not a bad team in terms of having that one guy that's gonna get you a bucket. Jaden Ivey is for sure it. So
yeah, and I just think, they're kind of stumbling into the tournament, but I just feel they still have a great 1-2 combo, and they have a man, like you said, that can get you a bucket and is incredible at doing that.
I wouldn't say Purdue is stumbling into the tournament though, just because they lost in the final game to Iowa. I just think Iowa was just hot. Iowa just got hot at the right moment. Like if you look at the teams Iowa beat leading up to the Big Ten tournament, and then to win the Big Ten tournament, they get his court fire.
Mm-hmm. So there's always one team that surprises us. I think you may have said it already, but I'm going to ask.
Yes, sir.
Who is the team in this tournament that can? I remember a couple years ago was Texas Tech going all the way to the national championship. They lost, but going national.
Team in the Final Four.
We remember the sister Jean or something in
Loyola. That was last year.
We remember Houston. I didn't think Houston was going to go that far.
Or Roberts last year. Last year was endless upsets. It was Oregon State made it far. UCLA made it far.
So what's the team, if you have one, that you think could make a deep run in this playoffs tournament that nobody's thinking
about? If you define Sweet 16 for a high seed, a deep run, then I got New Mexico State.
State. You really high on New Mexico State, bro.
I am. I watched a lot of them. I heard people saying UT Chattanooga. They saying they can beat Illinois' first round. I've heard that. I don't necessarily agree. I have Illinois winning, but I will take the points with UT Chattanooga for any gamblers out there. I'm trying to think of any higher seeds that I might.
While you think about it,
Boise State, they play Memphis and then they play Gonzaga, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I did tweet that Boise State can get at both teams. I did tweet that.
Okay.
No, I'm dead serious.
No.
Boise State, another hellacious defensive team with a guard who can score at will, and Marcus Shaver Jr. Then you have the Arizona transfer, Emmanuel Acott, who's a 6'8" point guard who runs the floor. He can get to the cup. You have experience. I'm not even gonna get started on how to pronounce two of their last names. One of them freshman, one of them a big down low. Their name is. I'm not doing it. You can look it up. I think it's 2-33 or 2-13. You can look their names up. I'm not doing it. Boise State, I think, can get at both teams. I know Memphis is hot. Granted, they lost to Houston, who they beat twice. But I mean, Houston's a really good team, so I don't fault them for that. I think if they can get past Memphis, I think they can holler at Gonzaga.
Okay. So I haven't been able to choose between one of these two as far as can make a deep run that nobody's really talking about. One of them, which I'm surprised to even say this, but one of them I have St. Mary's.
They're a 5 seed though.
They're a 5 seed, but bro, like nobody had. St. Mary's has to play the winner of UCLA or Akron, bro.
Which is UCLA.
Yes. So I think they could. Yeah, they're a 5 seed, but I think
they also dominated Gonzaga later in the year,
and that's why.
And I love Tommy Kuzi.
They're coming in hot, and they went up against the overall number 1 and dominated them. Not just Duke played Gonzaga. Now I know it was early in the year. Duke played Gonzaga, and it was a really close game.
Mm-hmm.
St. Mary's played them at the end of the year when all the you know your schemes, you know the players, you know who you're playing, and they beat the brakes off them.
Mm-hmm.
So either St. Mary's, and there's something I don't know why, but there's something about Iowa State that I like, man.
They play defense.
They play defense. They are a rugged team, man.
They got a score too. What's his name? Tyrese Hunter. I want to say
I just think they can really. They like those. They kind of remind me of Memphis, like the old grindhouse Memphis team, Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh, you're talking about Grizzlies? Okay.
Yeah, I just think that they want to play a very rugged game, and if they get into shootouts, they getting them out of there.
It's over.
But if it's a defensive battle, I have them going up against anybody because of how good they play.
I was honestly shocked they made the tournament.
I was too.
To be honest,
trust me, I was too, and I'm shocked. Like Texas A&M didn't make it.
I'm not.
I mean, they made it to the SEC championship. I thought that they would,
The only reason why I wasn't shocked is because they took some bad L's late in the year. I believe South Carolina, for those who don't know, I went to undergrad at Michigan State. I got accepted into graduate school at South Carolina. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I couldn't go. But anyway, South Carolina, I believe, got Texas A&M up out of there kind of late in the season. I can't remember. I always forget if it was Texas A&M or Mississippi State.
It was Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'm about to say. I'm pretty sure it was them.
Yeah.
So I think that was a super bad loss. And I think that who got in over them? I think Richmond still in the bid really hurt. If Richmond didn't steal that bid, which I was going to talk about earlier in the Davidson conversation, I think Texas A&M might have got in. But since Davidson ended up getting upset by Richmond, I think that took them out. I was honestly shocked SMU didn't get in.
Yeah, I was too. I don't really know how. I know some of them were conference champions, but I don't know how they really did those last in, last out, because there was a couple teams that I felt should have definitely got in. And there's a couple of teams that I'm like, how the hell did you make it? But so there's always a player that I'm not gonna say come out of nowhere, but there was a player that dominates the conversation and that just has an incredible run.
I think I got my answer.
Who is that player for you that, and they don't even have to like win a national championship, but who is that player for you that when we look up at the end of the tournament, you say, yo, he was the player of the tournament?
Okay, so obvious answer, I think, is Oscar Tshiebwe. If you're looking for like a dark horse answer, I would say Keegan Murray for Iowa. Johnny Davis, while he does put up numbers for Wisconsin, it'd be pretty inefficient at times. It'd be like he'll have 20, but it'll be like 6 for 24. I'm gassing it, obviously.
That's true.
But it'd be pretty inefficient.
Maybe.
But Keegan Murray, on the other hand, it's efficient. He can shoot it. He goes to the cup. He grabs boards, and he's I think he might be like a dark horse for a guy who, with like I said, Iowa being hot, the lead force of said hot team, he can be a guy that dominates conversation.
I guess I'm gonna go with Benedict Mathurin from Arizona.
Okay.
6'6", 210. He can shoot the hell out the ball. He's such a smooth player. Not saying this, I'm not saying this is his complete comp, but he kind of reminds me of Paul George as far as he can score with the best of them, and you can. It doesn't really feel like he's ever sped up. It feels like he dictates his own pace. And while Arizona may or may not win, I do think that he gives them their best shot. And I think that when we look up, because he's coming into the tournament hot. I got Benedict Mathurin as far as the player that we're going to talk about.
I see a lot of talks about him, so that's a good pick.
And lastly, before we go, I think you said it already, but I'm going to ask you, who do you have winning national championship?
Oof. So it's my fun. Baylor. I'm going back to back champs. I'm going back to back, man.
Back to back. Okay.
I'm sticking with my guns. I said it early in the year, like real early in the season, that I got Baylor winning this back to back. I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
I've gone bounced early now, and I look like a complete fool.
I've gone back and forth with two teams. But the injury to Caressa. I'm sorry.
We know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's big. I don't know how he's going to play. I don't know if he's going to play, but that's huge. I'm going with Auburn.
Oh, good pick. It's not a bad pick at all.
To me, it was between Auburn and Arizona. But I think that if you put them two together, Auburn matches up really well with Arizona. It just, like I said, the only questions I have about Auburn is their guard play. But they have the forwards and the bigs. They have those. I mean, so I'm gonna go with Auburn.
That's a good pick.
I got Auburn. So you have Baylor going back to back. I have Auburn. Okay.
Sticking with my guns, man. I wish I could remember some more mid-major teams, man. I can't really remember right now off the top.
Well, it don't matter. There ain't no mid-major teams making it to the Final Four.
I'm just, just some teams. Just
ain't no Oral Roberts in this one. Ain't no. I don't know. There's what was the St. Francis Austin or something? That one.
Oh no! You talking about Stephen F. Austin a couple years ago, right?
When there ain't no Florida Gulf Coast this year, like there's nothing. It's.
Well, y'all are some pretty good mid-major, man.
They're good, but I don't see them. I mean, I appreciate Carl for coming on again. To me, it was tough, man. It was either between Auburn or Arizona. I'm gonna go with Auburn. I'm gonna go with Auburn. But let's go to the women's side, and I want to bring on Tykera Carter. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Tykera Carter. So let's just dive right into this. We are in March Madness, women's, the crescendo of college basketball, and the number one seeds, of course, is South Carolina, Louisville, NC State, and Stanford.
Yep.
And it's interesting to me because I think this year, more than any year that I can think of, there's a lot of parity in the women's game. Meaning, yes, South Carolina has been pretty dominant, but in my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else won this year. And that's kind of more, in my opinion, that's more than usual. Let's start with the Greenboro region, which is, of course, headlined by South Carolina. And I talked to somebody else about this. South Carolina, of course, is coming into the the tournament with a loss to Kentucky. And a lot of people asking, will that loss carry into the tournament? I say it would if South Carolina, to me, had a gauntlet of a schedule the entire year. It felt like almost every week they were playing a top 10 or top 20 team.
Yeah, I would say they had the toughest schedule in the country, which is why they're the number 1 overall seed.
So my question to you, while yes, we did just acknowledge that they had the toughest schedule, one issue, I'm not going to say issue, one thing that could alarm me is, especially towards the end, South Carolina had a tough time holding on to leads. Now, of course, it didn't ultimately bite them until Kentucky, but they've had a tough time holding on to leads. Do you think that could come back to bite them in this tournament?
Well, I'll say this. They've had about a week where they've probably just been practicing. They've had conversations in their locker room, I would imagine. They're coached by Dawn Staley, where she understands the magnitude of the problems. And I'm pretty sure, coaches don't try to dig too deep into the articles and what people are saying on Twitter or something, but that has been a topic of discussion, is the fact that they do jump out to these leads, but they're also games where they're just too close for comfort and they're not playing as dominant from top to bottom. Maybe their defense is on, but their offense is off. Maybe Zia Cook is going back to some of her more immature ways and taking shots that aren't ideal for their offense and timeliness, I would say. So I think they understand that is the root of a lot of their problems. It's no doubt that they are stacked and they have the squad and the personnel. But when teams also understand that, they're going to turn it up and have belief like, okay, well, sure, they have the halftime lead or whatever, but coming into the second half on the scouting report, it's going to be that they give away leads or they have games close to the end. So I think the mindset for most teams going into playing South Carolina is, can we just keep this close?
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what happened with Kentucky. Like I think in that game they got down by as many as 15 points, but they just chugged away at it. And that part was what South Carolina wasn't necessarily used to, a team who actually took their whole shot at it and came all the way back. Now they've had, I would say late fourth quarter scares, but nothing like that Kentucky game so far this season.
So, like I said, we're looking at the Greensboro bracket. You have South Carolina 1, Iowa 2, Iowa State 3. Do you see any upsets in this bracket or in this region?
I would say a team that is coming into the NCAA tournament with some confidence is Miami out of the ACC. They knocked off Louisville and had that success story of coming back, and they have some pieces. I think the tough part when you look at this bracket with South Carolina is who matches up with their post players. And I think that makes all the difference. I think guard play, give or take, like there is a guard out there who can be equivalent to a Zia Cook. I don't think there's too many guards in the country who's like a Destiny Henderson, though, with experience and who her turnover rate and taking care of the basketball is just elite. I think super next level. So when we talk about that, the only team who I could potentially see upsetting South Carolina, so to speak, might be Iowa, because they have those big, hefty post players down low. And I say hefty in a sense where the Big Ten kind of lives and births those players that are like, I don't know if farm raised is the word, but some bigger girls, like, who can bump and grind and take the physicality like that. That's what the Big Ten Conference is sort of known for, that toughness. And so I would say that might be the team, and they're a 2 seed. So the possibilities of them meeting up before, I don't even know if that is a possibility, but that's the only thing I'm seeing. I don't know if Arizona is as deep as the year before to be the Cinderella once again. So if I were to see some potential upsets, I would say that Iowa game, if they do meet with South Carolina, which I'm looking at this right now. So South Carolina, they would go up against like the winner of Miami or UCF potentially. And it's like, I'm not trying to say this to skip over the first four people, but it's like that's set up for a reason like that to protect that number one seed. So I'm like, unfortunately, I don't think Howard will have the pieces, or whoever comes out of that first four, Howard or UIW, to pull off an upset against South Carolina. So sort of looking at it.
And while you look, I think I agree with what you're saying about Iowa. The only thing that I'm not gonna say scares me. The only thing that I have a hesitation about with Iowa is their scoring. As far as if Caitlin Clark's not scoring, it's while they do have good big post.
I think they have solid role players to play around her. But my biggest thing with Caitlin Clark is, are you recognizing when it's just not going in? And it's not to say stop shooting the basketball, but how are you getting others involved to then help you get easier shots where they might start sleeping on you a little bit, because then you're getting your post players involved early in the game. You're getting your other guards some shots or whatever, and help the game come to her a little easier. I feel as though Caitlin Clark at times can be a force. And when you are a high volume shooter, you are that go-to person as far as offense goes. That's typical. She doesn't always choose the best shots, and when she's on, she's on, and when she's off, she's off. Like that's what comes with her. And I think a lot of people understand that. But at the same time, I think what can make her game easier is her teammates being involved on the offensive end early on.
Yeah, I think so. What to your credit, I think they depend on her a lot, but also the fact that she has to trust her teammates. Yes, she can get 46 points with ease, but you have to trust that, okay, maybe me getting 46 against Iowa State isn't the best thing if I get maybe 20 and I get 10, 15 assists. So I think that's
I would say, especially in the tournament. I can't think of a player who won the tournament on their own, like just flat out. Like Brianna Stewart, she was like that, but think about the pieces that she had around her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she was dropping 20s and might have had a 30-point game. I don't know her statistics, so to speak, but she's a 4-time champion for a reason. But I think her team had a lot to do with her individual success.
So when we go down to the Wichita, there's always a number one seed that a lot of people say gets the raw end of the stick, gets the toughest gets the toughest region, and I would say that's Louisville. When you look at the Wichita region, and you have of course Louisville, but you have Baylor at 2, Michigan at 3, Tennessee at 4. To me, that is at that point they say, hey yo, Louisville, fend for yourself. And
I mean, truly. Then you got Oregon. Oregon is no team to sleep on, and I would even say Ole Miss.
Exactly. To me, this is probably the only bracket. Only region, maybe the Bridgeport region, but this might be the only region where I don't have as much confidence in the number one seed as I would in another team. I'll just say for me, I kind of have Baylor coming out of this. I mean, you have potentially the number one overall pick. Even though they didn't win the conference tournament, they still are like one of the hottest teams, especially at the right time. And they're good. They're good. They don't really have a weak point, and like weak enough to really derail the team. And in my opinion, when you go up against a Louisville, when you go up against some of the bigger teams, you can outrun them. You can match size for size. So, yeah, they didn't do Louisville any favors with this one, in my opinion.
Nah, not at all. I do agree with you. That is a super tough region. We named 5 teams off the bat who can make some noise. And in the women's game, there's not typically too many upsets, but if there were to be, I think it would specifically come out of this Wichita region. So what I will say about Louisville is down the stretch, they sort of have some similar problems as South Carolina when it comes to closing out games. They haven't been too good with that. And I would say specifically against NC State, one time around, I was watching that game. I don't remember at what part of the season it was, but they were on the road at NC State. They had a lead. Louisville just started coughing the basketball up. NC State started changing defenses. Diamond Johnson starts going off. It was like a whole whirlwind. Coach didn't call a timeout, and it seemed like the lead just kind of chipped away. And so I think about how they struggled with NC State quite a few times this season, as far as the defense goes, how they matched up with each other. And Baylor, I think, might be a more physical team than them.
Yes.
When you talk about physicality, having some dogs, horses, killing it on the boards. So I mean that could be the game, and I could even see them being knocked off by Tennessee. Tennessee has some of those similar attributes. What I will say is Louisville's post play isn't as strong as I think some of the other teams in this region. And I know, a conversation that my dad and I had on the boys' side is like guards are the ones who really have to come alive in the NCAA tourney.
Yeah.
I think the difference maker for the girls' side, because that physicality starts to kick in and you're tired. You're playing so many games in a matter of days that you weren't necessarily used to doing in the season. You know, there's some type of leverage break. I think post players are huge when it comes to that, and the strength of your conference as well. And so the Big 12 is no joke. And then when you talk about Tennessee coming out of the SEC, where they had to play South Carolina, and they had to go up against Georgia and schools like that, I think the physicality is a little different. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's just, I keep looking at this region, and there's a lot. Again, you said Oregon, and they have a upper class. Like they have a lot of juniors and seniors. It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough because it's they did not do Louisville any favors, and like you mentioned, I think you really see, especially in the tournament, your conference matters as far as who you play, the competition. Usually, of course, I mean, you see it mostly in football, but it's everywhere. Like the SEC, they play the more physical brand of basketball. Pac-12, they play a faster up and down game. ACC.
I'll even bring it to this, as far as like, how about Maryland? They was running through the Big Ten at some point, and they was winning Big Ten titles. But when they got to the tourney, they couldn't do anything. Yeah. And that was based off of strength of schedule. And at the time, who they were going up against in the Big Ten, they just really couldn't compare. And I think when it came to NCAA tourney, it sort of hurt.
Yeah. So speaking of Maryland, let's go over to the Spokane region.
Spokane. Okay.
Spokane region. I've been saying Spokane all day. I am,
man. Nah, that's a tough one. Washington.
So of course, Stanford's number one, reigning champion.
Yeah.
You have.
I mean, no lie, on paper, this one is looking like the easiest region.
Yes, that is kind of what I was saying. And Texas, good. Okay. Mulkey with LSU. Let me ask you, because we both have clearly ties to Maryland. Let me ask you about Maryland. I was talking to Jasmine Brown about it. Shouts out to her, highlight her. Mm-hmm. And of course, Maryland has dealt with injuries and everything all this year. But Maryland, in my opinion, is the hardest team to figure out as far as this tournament, because I mean, you have Angel Reese, you have, some really great players, but you don't know what you're going to get. Like, I can look at Maryland and I will not be surprised in the slightest if they make it to, I don't know, the Final Four. But then I also look at Maryland and I would not be surprised if a lot of people have Delaware beating them. So it's just,
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
So it's, how do you gauge Maryland's season? How do you gauge your confidence level with Maryland going into this playoffs?
I'll say this. Maryland goes how Angel Reese goes, and how, to me personally, Chloe Bibby can go. She's a hell of a shooter, and when she's hot, I think it gives them an edge because people have to respect her from out there. Then you get that hard closeout on her, that leaves room and opens up space for Angel Reese to be able to get the ball and operate. I think Angel Reese's toughness is something that can't be matched when we talk about a tough player to go up against mentally and physically. She's one of the players who I would say in the whole entire tournament, one of the toughest players you might face, as far as like, she's going to try to get in your head. And you like that about her. But sometimes when she does get in your head, she can take away from her game because she wants to play this game with the other teams. And that's why I say the team sort of does go how she goes. And then now I'm not sure about this right now. I haven't done my research. Is Ashley going to be back because she's pivotal? I don't even know the extent of what her injury was, to be honest.
People are saying that she's going to be back, but of course, you don't know the Ashley you're going to get. Again,
and that's hard.
You don't know, and again, there's a lot of people, and I'm gonna take myself out of it because clearly there's a little bit of bias there, but there's a lot of people that going into the season had them at least in the running to win it all. And again, it's just tough when injuries they've dealt with and inconsistency. You just don't know. I just don't know. I can't in good faith pick a Maryland game because it's like we've seen them look great against Indiana. Then we've seen them lose to teams like, okay, like what's going on here? So
I think they've just been through a lot of ups and downs this season. And I say ups and downs from a standpoint like Brenda Freeze, her father passed. That was a tough time for them. And in that same game, I think they faced Iowa or someone like that. Yeah, I think that was the game. And that's a game where emotions were involved. They played bad that game. Like and that's just something that has to do with off-court stuff that kind of carried over. And of course, would she have wanted it that way? No, but I think it was like a direct reflection of like what kind of happened on the floor that day. And then losing your point guard is tough. Not to say that their backup point guard wasn't good. She came and filled in those shoes fine. She's a shooter. She can hit shots as well. But Ashley dictates pace. She's a consistent scorer. Mm-hmm. She's super strong. You don't have a lot of stocky guards like Ashley who can get into you and make it a tough game for the other people. And she can defend. Yeah. So I think if they have her back, and again, like you have to say like what Ashley will you get. I think if Ashley decides to play, it's because she's like it's go time. Mm-hmm. I can't see her like being in any type of slump off the comeback. I would imagine she's been working out and stuff like that. So Maryland is a tricky one. I know Delaware is a tough team and they pose some of that physicality and stuff like that as well in the CAA conference. And they were tough for a lot of teams to play against this year.
Yeah. So I look at the Stanford team, and I don't think the Stanford team's as strong as it was last year. But again, this is the number one seed in the region, and I don't see a team. I mean, how they play so efficiently. Stanford, it's very rare that they have games where they just are sloppy. They have a lot of turnovers. You don't see that much from Stanford, and I guess I'll ask, but I don't really see. Do you see somebody upsetting Stanford in this region? I don't. I don't.
Now, to be honest, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and when we talk about a team who has just been solid all year, still like from top to bottom, I don't know if it'll happen, but I could see Stanford going back to back, like back to back as far as winning the title again.
Yeah. That's it. It was. We'll talk about it in a second. So let's go to the Bridgeport. And to me, this region, it's up in the air due to I don't know, and I don't think we know the UConn that we're gonna get. You get Paige back, AZ's back, but and. Yes, I love NC State. NC State is a physical team, and they will shoot the lights out.
I love NC State too. That's one of my favorite teams to watch.
But we have seen NC State has struggled with quicker teams. Not saying that they've ultimately lost, but they've struggled with quicker teams. And to me, I mean, I was thinking about Notre Dame, but I saw them damn near lose by 50 that one time.
Yeah. So how I feel about that is, I've watched a few games where NC State Kunane has gotten off to a slow start, and that has been like no good for them. And I think in the tournament, they can't have that happen. Like she has to be ready to go. She has to be playing hard. there's games where at halftime she's held scoreless and she might come out and finish with 10 and they still win, but that's not the same pressure as a tournament game where you're one and done. So I think even last year, like they sort of underachieved with the team that they have, because they brought back all the same people. And there's nobody new, so to speak. They have their same squad. And so I'm really curious to see like how far they can go. I like their chances in this region. If I were to see somebody like to get them, it would probably be Kentucky. But I also I think Kentucky can beat UConn, but I'll talk about that in a sec, because I posted on my story the other day that actually I think Kentucky versus Princeton will actually be a decent game. Princeton, they always
good for
somebody in the tournament, and they run that Ivy League. They always got some pieces, a shooter, a scorer, like something. And where me and a girl, we got in a conversation. She was like, but physicality wise, I don't think they can guard Kentucky. I was like, but skill wise, I think they can. I think, when you go up against Princeton, you're guarding a lot of cuts and movements, and you have to be ready for everything. And I think that piece of what they do will wear teams down if they can get past Kentucky, which, we'll sort of see. They're on a high right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they broke out and got to the Sweet 16. So I'm not calling an upset there. I just think that will potentially be a good game.
I guess that's kind of where I want to go. I kind of want to ask you. We all know that you're a former basketball player, and now a play-by-play commentator. Is that what they're called?
I do color commentating, but I've done play-by-play before. Yeah,
color commentating. Mm-hmm. When we talk about Kentucky, what do you think? Because I'm a former college basketball player as well, so I kind of have my feelings towards it. What do you look at most? Do you look at a team like Kentucky that's coming into the tournament hot? They just beat the number 1 overall team. We know they can catch fire from 3 like almost anybody, like no one else in this entire tournament. Or do you look at, okay, well, let's look at their body of work. Let's look at they've had good games, and then they've had I will say their season has been more up and down than anybody who's in this tournament who actually was able to overcome and succeed when at the right time. So if they come into the NCAA tournament with that same mojo, Kentucky could be a problem. But you never know if a team is too high because like, oh, we want it, we're this, we're that, and they sort of revert back to those old ways. I don't see that happening. I think right now they're just doing what they're doing. They're playing their best basketball, and that took time for them this season because things weren't going well. Like their back was against the wall. Nobody could have predicted or projected them beating South Carolina. Ryan Howard stepped up though. She had a slump in like that beginning portion of the season. She would have some good games, bad games. She was here. Yeah. Now I think she's here. She's leveled. So I think it's very important for Ryan Howard to go in and do her thing, who a lot of people still think she's the potential number 1 draft pick, projected number 2. She's up there. She's a lottery. And so I don't know how to feel about them in a sense where, will they win it all? I don't think so personally, but they get past that first game, I think sky's the limit. And I say that because Princeton will pose a threat to them. Yeah. I think, which this is going to sound terrible, but it's true in my opinion. I look at Princeton the same way I look at Princeton. To me is a Stanford with lesser talented players. As far as they do everything right. They cut well, they pass well, they pass on time. They just don't have the Haley Jones. They don't have the players like that, which is why I think Princeton, they're always there. As far as they're always one of the top teams, especially in the Ivy League.
They have a squad. Like it's not like I think one individual like flamethrower. So and even the former Princeton coach is at UNC now, and she's the head coach there, and they're still winning. Like, so that says a lot.
So last year, there's always a player in the tournament that is just like, okay, either we saw them coming or they just take over the tournament. I would argue that last year it was Haley Jones of Stanford. She clearly was the best player, in my opinion, in the tournament, and of course, she helped Stanford get to the national championship and ultimately win. Who do you think in this year's, of course, pool could be that player that we talk and say either they may not even have to, of course, lead their team to the championship, but who is the player that we're going to be talking about, in your opinion, when it's all said and done this year, as far as that they were the player of the tournament?
Hmm. I would think Aaliyah Boston would have to be in that conversation. She's been tough for people all year, a double machine. But maturity in her game and her body, the way that she approached it, like she wanted to get better and she is better, like hands down. You see different stories about her and how she changed her eating habits. She lost this much in weight and gained this in muscle mass, like a lot of different things like that. And I think in that game they lose, like to me, it doesn't come down to Aaliyah Boston. There was a lot of different things, but will she be that leader for the team that they need, as far as when that fourth quarter is starting to look shaky, or when the third is like we're not playing our best basketball? Can she be that? So I think from a scoring standpoint, from a rebounding standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, blocking shots, being the person who can like stand her ground. She's never really a player who's in foul trouble. Like you have to worry about that. Like she's smart.
Yeah.
I would think it would be Aaliyah Boston.
I agree. I think that I mean, she's been arguably the best player in the entire season. I
Yeah.
guess my sleeper pick of a player could be was it Naz Hillman from Michigan?
Yeah, from
Naz
Michigan.
Hillman.
Yeah. She's a beast too. And she gives post players a run for their money because she can score it in a different way. She has a mid-range game as well, and she can create her own shot. So I think that sort of gives her an advantage as a post player too. But a lot of the offense does run through her, and she's relied on to do a lot. So what does that look like in a tournament? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. The only other player I can kind of think of that the success of their team, I'm not gonna say solely on them, but mainly on them, is Shakira Austin.
Tykera Austin. I was thinking that. I was like, I know that's who he's about to say. Yeah.
And while I don't, I mean, clearly Ole Miss is a good team, and even you said earlier they could be on spoiler alert from some point. I do think that they go as far as she takes them, because I mean, she's 6'5". She's pretty much the centerpiece of that offense, of that team in general. So I think she can. Well, of course, she's not as offensively gifted as Haley Jones is, but I think that when it's all said and done, whether they go far or not, she will be a big part of them either advancing or not advancing. So,
Yeah, 100%. I love Shakira Austin's game, and I think where Ole Miss runs into some problems is their consistency of their guards, not necessarily their post players. So I'm like, man, she's leaving this year. Like, who do you replace with that so you can continue to be in the conversation? Because Coach Yo has done a phenomenal job with that group and bringing kids to Ole Miss in the first place. Like, they haven't been on the map talked about in years. So you're able to land somebody like Shakira Austin who can score around the bucket. She's trying to expand her range a little bit. She runs the floor really well. One of her problems is, though, she is a player who fouls and could potentially see herself on the bench. So is she going to be smart for her team and like learn when to let some things go? And I wouldn't say conditioning, so to speak, but she's one of those post players that, yes, she runs the floor well, but I don't think she gets up and down as quickly as some of the other bigger players, post forwards around the country who are considered like your best. She's more of like a traditional five. I'll say that. And she doesn't pose as much athleticism as like a Melissa Smith. Yeah. So I would say those are the difference makers, but I'm definitely big on Shakira Austin and her game. I think Ole Miss will have to really rely on their guards to be able to get her passes in there cleanly. Yeah. And then also where can they pick up the scoring load and stuff like that when Shakira can't.
So the ultimate question is, who do you have? Well, let me say this, because
who do I have winning? Yeah. Maybe South Carolina will pull me wrong. I don't think they're gonna win it though.
Oh,
I'm not seeing it for South Carolina. I don't know why. I watched a few games of theirs this season where they've been completely like dominant top to bottom, but I hope they prove me wrong because I like South Carolina, like I genuinely do.
So then I asked because that kind of threw me for a loop because I've always had to ask people, if not the number ones, who do you have winning it all?
I wouldn't say like not the number one, so to speak, but again, I think I could potentially see Stanford going back to back, or I mean Baylor might surprise. I know South Carolina will make it out of their region for sure. Like they shouldn't have a problem with that. But if it comes to a point where they have to face Stanford, I think Stanford might win.
So you think I heard
it's tough because like
you think
I think they're a really good basketball team, but I think Stanford, when it comes to decision making, down the stretch and just making the right play is better than South Carolina at that. And I think those are factors that are huge in the tournament.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard. I'll update once I actually make a bracket and have to like figure out like who wins and who loses because I didn't make my bracket for the men's or women's yet. But off top, that's how I'm feeling. Yeah, I don't know why. And I just feel like a lot of times when a team, I mean, in recent years, I'll say, because it hasn't been the UConn show anymore where they're just like,
yeah.
I think now a lot of teams who are experiencing like success like all season long are coming up short at some point. Like they're not making it to the finish line. That's been the story in like some of these NCAA tourneys. So we'll see. And Stanford is also a team where they don't necessarily face like the toughest competition during the season, like, but they ran off with it last year still. So, and who would ever, like I said again, guess Arizona, you know, that be the final. So it's gonna be an upset somewhere in there. I just don't know who yet. I need to really sit down with it.
Now I'm not putting it all on her shoulders, but I think that the play from Zia Cook is huge. As far as Zia Cook, as far as how far they can go.
No, you're not lying. It's gonna be pivotal.
And while she, of course, Aaliyah Boston's been the best player on the team, you still need a guard to give you the ball. And we talk about people talk about Caitlyn Clark's shot selection sometimes. That's the same with Cook. Not saying that
I agree.
Not saying she's terrible, but sometimes she'd be like, okay, maybe you could have had that 5-pass rule on that one instead of.
Sometimes I think she unintentionally has a selfish bone in her body. And it's not meaning to be. It's just her decision making and IQ is not all the way there yet. I would like to say, or maybe she, you know, genuinely in her heart, she shoots that and she's like, this is me. I can make that. In others' eyes, that's not a good shot. In your offense, you're coming down, you're one and done. Your best player, Aaliyah Boston, didn't get a touch. Like, you know, she makes some of those plays sometimes that's super frustrating because it's like she takes some shots where it's like you can get that anytime. So why? And sometimes it's not at the right time either. So those are the shots where it says your coach, if you make it, it goes in, you know, I'm happy. If not, like, what are you doing? Yeah, like it's questionable. So I think a lot of people like her. I'm huge on her game. Like I like what she can do in her ability, but I think those are areas that like to continue to grow and go forward and especially like make an impact at the next level. Like she'll have to clean it up.
And I guess lastly on the tournament, I think we're both in the greens here that if we have one number one that is in most danger of losing before they get to the championship, I think it's Louisville.
I think it's Louisville.
Okay, I'll just make it short.
Yeah, I think it's Louisville. Like they're number one, but number one in a sense where I would have to go back and look at their schedule, but I don't remember like anyone where they played where it's like, dang, they got a tough game coming up outside of like their conference. And the ACC was good this year. Like they, you know, they had a lot of bump and stuff like that. A lot of players to watch out for, like Georgia Tech and I I mean, down the stretch, like Miami, a lot of teams came along like late in the season.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, again, I appreciate the time. I know that you're a very busy woman. This whole year, you do the G League sideline reporting, which is great. Color commentating, especially for college games, which is great. So I definitely want a woman in the media to give their opinion on this. All year, I've been hearing about Caitlyn Clark, and this is no offense to Caitlyn Clark at all. I've heard about Caitlyn Clark. She's been incredible, putting up 40-point games. Like she's been great. Mm-hmm. But I feel that there's been a discrepancy as far as media coverage for African American women that have been doing great. Because I mean, if you look at Amisha Howard, she's been on a tear with in DePaul. She's been going crazy. Aaliyah Boston probably will win the Player of the Year, and I barely hear anything about her. And when I look at how the media has been covering this season, especially, players like Caitlyn Clark and players like homegirl from Villanova that won the Big East Player of the Year. Do you feel as an African American woman in sports media that there is a discrepancy in how at least the African American women players have been discussed as much as you can say Caucasian players that are doing well?
I would say totally. I think, first of all, it starts with people are copycats. Like everybody just wants to talk about the hottest player. Well, if ESPN is talking about them, I need to be talking about them on my blog, and nobody's doing the deeper dive or dig into other players who are super successful in the country. And I think it starts with that, a problem. And then another thing about the conversation that we're having, Anissa Murrow and Aaliyah Boston, those are two post players. So nobody is necessarily sold on talking about the post players that are dominant, not since like a Sylvia Fowles or anything like that. But that's when the game was more so geared towards post and bigger players. Now it's about guards. So a lot of people will probably go and look at some Aaliyah Boston highlights and be like, well, these aren't exciting. Caitlyn Clark is coming across the half court and shooting threes, like letting them fly. And so she has the more highlightable plays, but that doesn't mean she's the better player. That doesn't mean she's doing things. So I think that's where the real discrepancy starts, where people don't necessarily know the game of basketball and understand that it's really hard to do what Aaliyah Boston is doing. It's really hard to do what Anissa Murrow is doing at DePaul as a freshman. She's leading her team, her squad. But I think it comes down to, again, where you go and you look at their film and they're shooting layups over three people, but some people don't think that's impressive, but they think, oh, I have to talk about Caitlyn Clark because she scored this much coming across the half court mark. And they're not looking at the total picture, and it helps because she's white, right? So like now we have her on the front page. So I think that's where the discrepancy really does lie, and I think it also lies like position based too. People just don't show like the post players as much love as they should. And I think it also starts with the bigger media outlets not understanding the magnitude of the game and its evolution, because that's something that can be talked about. Literally, is how has the game evolved? Where do we start? Who are some of the more tougher post players in the country? Because when I think about a player to date who really got the coverage I would say they deserved was Maya Moore. Obviously she's not playing anymore, but like that was a Black woman who her career was done right. And so as far as coverage, everybody wanted to talk about her and stuff like that, but she was one of the most exciting dynamic guards in the country at her time. And she happened to be a Black woman. So I think that is a part of it. Like, your skin color, like, yes, I can put her on everything. I find it more so a problem when, they post pictures of players and like, why does Aaliyah Boston's picture look so bad, but Caitlyn Clark? That's where I find problems with, because I'm like, Aaliyah Boston has plenty of great pictures. Like, why would you choose the one where she looking tore up or crazy? Who's doing the research and diving on these things? So I look at a lot of stuff like that, storyline based. I think people are going off of the clout, the highlights, but these women are out here and they're putting in work, especially, our Black post player out here, and even the guards who aren't getting enough recognition as they should. But I think it comes down to who's going to get the most clicks and retweets. And obviously people are leaning towards more of a Caitlyn Clark for that.
And I'm gonna let you go in a second. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I look at it as the Jimmer Fredette effect, in my opinion. And this is what I mean by that. I mean, we just call it spade a spade. African Americans dominate the sport of basketball.
I mean, it wouldn't be a basketball without us. So.
And I feel the media, and I work in the media as well. I feel the media tries their hardest. So when they find a player that's maybe not African American, they try their hardest to cling to them and try to propel them. And that's nothing against Caitlyn. That's nothing against Jimmer Fredette, but they try to propel them higher than they should because they want to feel like, okay, yes, it's a sport dominated by Black people, but we have our players.
Yeah, something here. Yeah.
If you look at 2011, Jimmer Fredette was going crazy in college. He was putting up 50-point games, 40-point games like it's nothing. But nobody talked about Kawhi Leonard that was going crazy in San Diego State. Or nobody was talking about Kemba Walker, who was going crazy at UConn, had won the national championship. And I just feel, and tell me if you feel I'm wrong. I just feel the media tries, and I think you may have said it's true, but I think the media tries to cling on no matter how great it is, because again, this is nothing.
They're riding that story of that white player. Yeah, I agree with it. But I'll say this. I wish Caitlyn Clark all the best success at the next level. Mm-hmm. But some of the plays that she's doing now and getting away with at college.
Yeah, that's not going.
I don't think it's flying in the WNBA. Now, she'll have to expand her game a little bit to find different ways to get her shots off. And I've seen game plans where teams have been able to shut her down. You sending two people out her high hands, just being clean with it. Like, she's had a tough time with that. But I also put into perspective, she is a sophomore. She has time for growth and evolution. But at the next level with the Diana Taurasi's, the Asia Wilsons, the point guards, the Skylar Diggins, you gonna have to do some extra work to be able to bump and grind and to be able to excel there. So that leads me to the point where, how long do we hear about Jimmer Fredette though? You talk about him for the seasons that they're in. Kawhi is still going though.
Yeah,
he's there.
That's true.
So I think that's why they cling so hard to these stories, because it's like, where does this take them though to the next level? You're getting your money off of these people while you can, because they might not be around later. And again, that's not to say that Caitlyn Clark won't have success in the league or whatever. We'll see when that time comes. She's only a sophomore. But that's my little 2 cents on that.
And last question, I promise you remind me of something that I got killed for some reason, but I want to hear your take on it. We talk about Caitlyn Clark. She's a sophomore, meaning that there's no way that she's eligible of getting drafted this year. Do you think that the WNBA in college should change the ramification or the requirements for women players getting drafted? Because there's no one and done in the women's game, unfortunately. So,
well, you're draft eligible after your junior year. The only reason why I say the WNBA is not in a place to really change that quite yet is because they don't have the space, the spots. Like, so many people stay around for so long in the league because that is their livelihood, that's their money, and they're damn good. So I think when it comes to, we talk about a player like Clark, the WNBA can't afford for a player like that to stick around and sit and wait on their development like an NBA team can hold on to an asset like a young Kobe Bryant and be like, we know something about him, like it's going to be great. That doesn't happen often in the league. I think you either come in and you make a instant impact, or you come off the bench and eventually, like, those are the types of stories that aren't in our game yet for the WNBA. And I think eventually it could be that, but I think expansion has to be the first thing. And then maybe we talk about, can kids come out early and stuff like that. But also with the pay, who will want to leave early? You're getting NIL now, unless you're struggling with school, you have some type of learning disability problems, whatever. Like, I get it. Like, you're really freaking good at basketball. It's not clicking in the classroom. Happens. Jewel Lloyd left early for that same reason. Yeah. So I think that's where the WNBA's head is with that. Like, we can't even fly our women, private. Like, we have other things that they have to work on before that's in the discussion. And I think, again, that'll be something that takes years because, there's only but so many people who can play in the league on those rosters.
Thank you again, Tykera, for coming on. And last but certainly not least, here is my conversation with Jasmine Brown. So Jasmine, let's get straight into it. With the let's do the Spoanoke region. Um, of course, that is led by the number one seed in that region, Stanford. And I want to start with Maryland. We know we both have ties in Maryland. To me, Maryland is the hardest team to gauge in this, almost in this entire tournament, because we've seen Maryland look incredible. I mean, they beat Indiana. We've seen a good Maryland. Then we've seen a Maryland, then it's like Jesus.
Right.
So it's hard. Like I remember when I did my, I guess, soft predictions. I said Maryland could be a spoiler. They could spoil some teams. I know they have Delaware, and to me, they have a top 10 player in the entire tournament, and Angel Reese. So, what is your gauge on how far Maryland could go in this entire tournament? Not just the Spokane region.
Yeah. I feel like it's hit or miss with them. They could, I mean, people right now have Delaware upsetting Maryland. Yeah. And then they have Maryland going to a Final Four. So it's just like you can't really gauge what they're going to do. And especially last year, a lot of people had Maryland winning it all.
Yeah.
And they got surprisingly bounced by Texas. Like that, nobody saw that coming. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they have to play their defense. They have to they have to play Maryland basketball. You know, I don't know how Ashley Owusu was going to play. I really think she is my question mark right now. Mm-hmm. As much as I like her, coming back from her injury, you can kind of tell that the team isn't flowing with her. So I feel that if she's healthy, she can play point. I think Maryland can go pretty far. Also too, I think the thing that's been holding Maryland back for years is depth. They have not had a strong roster in a couple years now. So sure. They haven't had a full person roster. So I think they need to get that back as well. But for now, they need to all bodies need to be there. And I think that at least they can go to a Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think you did touch on the injuries, and that has been a big part this entire season, honestly. Mm-hmm. And even with I think because the injuries has also been a level of inconsistency, because now you have players that didn't expect to be as important as they are. Not saying they're not important, but so I think that health is health is at where is it going to be at this point, seeing as though we're in the tournament. And again, even in your answer, we don't know what to get out of Maryland. So right. that's just how it's gonna be. Mm-hmm. So let's speak on Stanford for a second. Of course, the number one overall seed in the entire tournament was South Carolina, but Stanford, has, they've been solid all year. I think, of course, South Carolina has been the most consistent, but Stanford has been Stanford. And I think that's clearly behind a candidate for Player of the Year, Haley Jones. How important do you think Haley Jones is going to be in not only Stanford trying to repeat, or trying to get to the national championship, but they have Texas, and Texas is a tough out for anybody, as we saw in the conference tournament. Mm-hmm. How do you think that Stanford has or clearly the number one, but do you think Stanford has enough to, I guess, put it all together, as far as, because they didn't get any easy road in their they have Kansas they have to go against, they have Ohio State, they have LSU. So how do you think that they have enough to at least make it to, I don't know, a Final Four as far as Stanford? I know it's crazy to think for number one, but do you think that they can be led by Haley Jones to make it to a Final Four and even a national championship?
Yeah, I feel of course, they lost, Kiana, but I feel that they have the makings of getting back there. I don't they let me see. I didn't pick them winning it last year. I didn't even think they were going to. So I mean, they were good. They're good. Don't get me wrong, but it was just something about other teams I thought were going to win it all. So it surprised me. I just think when it comes to Stanford, I think that they're back on track at the right time, because they did not look. I mean, it looked weird in the beginning of the season. They were like, okay, they were struggling against, I forgot. I don't forget. Was it South Dakota or so? They played some like team, and they were up at halftime. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what's going on with Stanford, but then I guess now they're back on track this season. But I think Haley would definitely be the key piece, as she was in the championship. So I mean, as long as it go through her, I think they'll be fine. But I think right now, I do think for right now, South Carolina will be my strongest one out of all of them for sure.
You touched on South Carolina. Do you think that losing to Kentucky in the SEC championship, do you think that that's going to have an effect moving forward as far as in the tournament? I know they have to face Howard, which is like, well, possible playing thing, but face Howard. Right. But do you think that loss, because Quiet as kept, they've been dominant all year. However, towards the end of the year, they've been losing some leads. And while, of course, that hasn't bit them until they got to Kentucky, do you think that moving forward or going into the tournament, that could their lack of, I guess you can say, finishing off teams, do you think that could affect them winning it all?
It could. It's all about matchups. It doesn't matter how good of a team you are. If you can't go up against a matchup, you're just doomed. But I do think their pieces have to work together to win. I think the biggest surprise for me was Zaya Cook. I thought that she was going to be hot the whole the season, but she kind of dropped off for me, which is surprising. But I think possibly because of the fact that their schedule overall was so hard, I think it reflected in the end of the season. They played so many top 25 teams, and they played so many top 10 teams. They kept battling all season, and that's mental and physical. So Kentucky, they just got hot randomly then a tournament, but I think now they had time to reset right now, and I think with that, I don't know why, if they do play Howard in the second round, and then bypass those games to get to Sweet 16, I think they should be ready for it. Just having those little games will help them out. But I would love to see how they stack up against those teams that are in the Sweet 16 and moving forward, because if they can't, if their efficiency isn't there still in the tournament, I would definitely blame it on their schedule for sure.
Yeah, they did not get one thing that you did touch on it. One thing that I do think is gonna one thing that I think is going to help them is the fact that they had a hell of a schedule this entire year. Whether it felt like almost every game they played was a top 20 game, and I think that's going to help them moving forward. So I do like how you did point that out, and I was a little concerned when with Zia Cook, but I also think the emergence of Aaliyah Boston, definitely has something to do. Like the ball started going through her
Right.
as much as it should, seeing as though she more than likely will win the Play of the Year. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a. I think that they are the most battle tested team going into the playoff or going into this tournament, and I'm excited to see how they fare. But let's go over to the Spokane region one more time. So we talked about Stanford, we talked about Maryland. Is there any other team that you could see that could emerge out of this region as as a candidate for a team that could be on upset alert, or a team that they could put somebody on upset? Do you see a team in this region?
Yeah, I think I would definitely be on alert for Florida Gulf Coast.
Hmm.
Her name is slipping me. But she was at Ohio State, but she her name is slipping my mind. But she's like in a WNBA uh draft, like in their draft board right now. So, I think that team could be really good. Also LSU. I think LSU would be a surprise. Even though, they are a 3 seed, but I think people didn't really see or um predict, I guess, how great Kim Mulkey would do with the roster.
I was one of them.
Um
I was one of them.
yeah. I guess because of how everything went down, she left Baylor, went to LSU, and then she got that roster. But I, she has experience. She has postseason experience. A lot of it, she just won. She won a national title in 2019. So, I think LSU will probably be my main one. I would say Ohio State, because they have a lot of they have strong perimeter shooters.
Mhm.
So that's something that they can really get a lot of teams out the paint if they do that. And also Big Ten, I think the Big Ten as a whole, they're like really underrated and slept on. And we saw that last year. Michigan advanced, Indiana advanced. Like there's so many teams that I think it was like 2 or 3 teams that went to the Elite Eight, or 4 that went to the Elite Eight last year. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Big Ten team came out of this. I know people are expecting Maryland, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State came out of it.
Okay. So let's go down to the Bridgeport, which of course is led by the NC State and the UConn. To me, this is probably the toughest uh uh region, because you have, like I said, NC State, UConn. Kentucky is hot right now, hotter than any team, especially when we talk about shooting the ball. Um, I think this is probably the only, I'm not gonna say only, but this is probably the region that to me is most up in the air as far as anybody that can come out of it. And that's no disrespect to NC State. To me, that's more respect to the teams that's there. Uh, let's kind of focus on UConn this year, because they've had an uncharacteristic year for them. With of course Paige not being there, but now she's back, of course. Fit is everything in basketball, as you would know. And not saying she doesn't fit clearly, but she came back later in the season and they struggled. Do you think that we see a fully healthy UConn now? Do you think that they could, of course, the 2 seed, but do you think that they could win it all? Honestly, that's the question that I have. Now that Paige is back, do you think that they have enough to win it all?
Um, it it depends. I think they have AZ back, they have Paige back. Kristen is doing her thing, but I think as a whole, and Dorka, but I think as a whole, sorry, the depth was just not there. Um, and they play in the Big East, but they ran through it.
Yeah, it's the Big East.
So yeah, so I think we really don't get to see how they are until the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
They did the same thing in AAC, but I think because of the fact that they play in these weak conferences, they have these fresh legs, and that's why they're able to advance so far all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on Notre Dame for a second. So they're the 5th seed. I can't get out of my head that damn near 50-point loss that they had. And when you have a team like NC State, you just talked about depth, and NC State is a deep team. They can shoot the hell out the ball. They are great defensively. No, I'm not saying we used to, but Notre Dame would always have that mantra. When you had Skylar Diggins, you had some of the people that they had. Mm-hmm. It's to me, I look, even though they're a 5th seed, which honestly, even though they did kind of finish out the season kind of well, I wouldn't put them at the 5th seed. I think that I don't think that they have, honestly, I'm asking you about this because I'm looking at their matchup between Notre Dame and Massachusetts. And I honestly think Massachusetts can upset them. That's the upset alert for me. Out of the entire Bridgeport region, who do you have on upset alert?
I definitely have Princeton on upset alert. They've always been good, and I can definitely see them possibly knocking Kentucky out. And also, I mean, that's pretty much it. I kind of see everybody else taking care of business. I mean, the 8-9 matchups are always up in the air. But I think in this region, I think and Florida, I can possibly see Florida on upset. They've been hot. They were hot to the point where they extended their head coach, took the interim tag off. So they've been really hot. They've been upsetting teams, ranked teams. So I definitely see Florida and Princeton on upset alert. But I think with Notre Dame, I think Olivia Miles, like, she's played really, really great for them this season. And she's been continuing to put up a lot of numbers for them. So of course, freshman experience, you're going to see how that turns out in the tournament. But I could see Notre Dame taking care of business there.
Gotcha. To me now, I kind of look at Kentucky right now the same way I look at Maryland, in a sense of they're a hard team to rank right now, seeing as though we've seen them at their worst this year and they didn't look that good. They barely looked like a tournament team, but then we've seen them at their best and they caught fire at the right time. And being as hot as they are, especially from the 3-point line, you can see that carrying them a long way. But I also see they rely a lot on the 3-point line. And if they're not hitting, they're not hitting. So I definitely can agree with Princeton. It's hard to gauge, in my opinion, with Kentucky, but I can see Princeton, because Princeton, they seem like one of those teams that's, oh shoot, Princeton, there it goes. Like, they're good again. That's how it is. So I can see that. So let me get your Final Four.
Let me see. I will do South Carolina for sure. I'll put UConn in there. Stanford. I'll probably go NC State.
Okay. So out of all the number ones, from what it sounds like, you have out of all the number ones, who do you think is highest on the upset alert?
I would say NC State.
And you have, because they have to play UConn?
I think that. But I just think that they've always been that team that they just choke. I don't know. They choke. I mean, last season they choked. They lost to Indiana. This was very uncharacteristic for them. So, I think because of their history, their track record, I just don't really have much faith in them. But could be different. Also, I think Alyssa Cunane is good. I know she got injured in the tournament, but yeah, I mean that's probably the highest for me. But I can also go South Carolina just because of their fatigue, and all that they play in the season. So you never know. I feel like this is probably the most up in the air I've ever seen. I think that this particular season had a lot of parity, which we haven't really seen in the past. So I think it's gonna be a pretty good tournament.
Gotcha. So
now they have brackets too, so it's gonna make it even more fun.
Yeah. So who do you have as a player to watch as far as the entire tournament? Of course, you have great players like Aaliyah Boston. See what Caitlyn Clark is gonna do. Nalisa Smith, she's projected to be the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft. Who do you think the player, once it's all said and done as far as this year, who's the player that we're going to talk about took over March? Because last year it for sure was Haley Jones. So who do you think is going to be that player?
Depending if they can advance, definitely will look out for Anissa Morrow for DePaul. She's been putting up a lot of double doubles. I think they play Dayton.
Yeah.
In the play-in. So if they can win and kind of make some noise, I think she'll be a really good player to watch out for. Of course, Olivia Miles for Notre Dame, Kayla Pointer for LSU for sure. I would probably say Taylor Marxell also for Ohio State, and then for Indiana. Goodness gracious, this name just slipping me. Indiana squad. I'll say Indiana.
Okay, got you. I didn't ask you this, and this can be the last question. I do appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been this thing going around social media, and I tend to agree with it, but I want to hear your take. So this entire year, the entire NCAA year, all we've been hearing is Caitlyn Clark, which rightfully so. She's been putting up numbers that's like godly numbers, like crazy numbers. However, I think there's a discrepancy. It feels like there's a discrepancy the way that we talk about Caitlyn Clark, and then we talk about other players. Like they people were saying that Caitlyn Clark was like the runaway player of the year, and I'm like, all right, hold on. What about Leah Boston? What about Angel Reese? What about you said her name, Amisa Morrow? Do you think that there is a disparity in the way that the WNBA covers African American players that are dominant, because they, not saying that there aren't great Caucasian players, but all I've heard this entire year, while yes, Aaliyah Boston's been great and she may probably win the player of the year, I've heard way more coverage about Caitlyn Clark putting up 40-pointers. And do you think that there's a discrepancy in the way that we cover, or that the NCAA and media in general covers African-American players outside of, or compared to Caucasian players that are doing good?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel that because people think, people automatically know that basketball is a predominantly Black sport. Mm-hmm. So I feel that when they find a Caucasian player, white player do well, that it's something that's going to drive headlines. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, when the Black person does it. But I feel that with that, it just shows how much they don't care about Black person. Aaliyah has been playing all year, dominating, and they're like, oh, but wait, this person. I just feel like if the roles were switched and it was Caitlyn Clark, doing that, but Aaliyah Boston was kind of doing a Caitlyn Clark thing, I don't think that they would have a discussion about it. It's just kind of like, oh, well, Caitlyn, she's that's it, like that's it. But with Aaliyah, it's like, well, I'm not sure yet, So it's very annoying. It's very frustrating to see that. And if she doesn't get it, if Aaliyah doesn't get it, it's going to be hell. Like everybody's gonna go off.
Yeah.
Which I don't think she won't get it, but yeah, they just need to give it to her. But yeah, when it comes to that stuff, it's always a but wait when it comes to Black people. But if it's white, it's clear cut. This is what it is. No arguments here. So they need to work on that, because it's just not. And I get it. They're doing it, to increase engagement and keep the conversation going. But like you said, like it's just something that is different when it depends on that player.
Yeah, I kind of hearken. I kind of go back to, it's a Jimmer Fredette syndrome, in my opinion. Jimmer Fredette going crazy, putting up all these numbers, but it's like, yeah, it's easy to put, I'm not gonna say easy, but yeah, you can put up 44 when you're taking 45 shots, or you can put up 50 when you're pulling from 34. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not taking anything away from Caitlyn, because she's been going crazy, but I just noticed, and you even, which I think that's why highlight her is so good. And you guys do an incredible job, because you highlight people and you highlight things that should be highlighted. You highlight incredible women doing incredible things in sports. And it's not just all right, we're just going to talk about, Caitlyn Clark for 15 segment or 15 posts. Like, you guys do a great job at that. And I really wanted to ask you that question, because when I saw that Amisha Morrow didn't win the conference player of the year, I'm like, hold on, wasn't she going, I know she's a freshman, wasn't she going crazy? Like, she was going crazy. So it's a Jimmer Fredette thing, man. Jimmer Fredette was going crazy, but his team wasn't that good. And I'm not saying Iowa was that good, but you take Caitlyn Clark off of Iowa, it's a wrap. And it's just like,
oh yeah, for sure.
So, but I do want to thank you. I know your time is pressing. I do thank you for coming on the pod. Again, congratulations to yourself. Congratulations to I Like Her. You guys are incredibly important in this sports world, in the sports realm.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And it's you guys are definitely the benchmark of how to cover women's sports. And that's definitely something that is important. And I appreciate you guys. And I thank you, Jasmine, for coming on, and keep shining, as how I like to say, keep shining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And there you have it. I appreciate Carl. I appreciate Tykera. I appreciate Jasmine. I appreciate all three of you guys for coming on the podcast. It definitely means a lot. And I appreciate you guys for listening. That has been today's episode of the podcast. Again, I wanted to dedicate this episode to college basketball. We'll talk about NFL and all that on Saturday. I appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, long sleeve, sweater, jogger, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Go get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to whoever you're listening. Please subscribe to whoever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope that, leave comment. Tell me how you feel, who you have winning it all in on both the men's side and the women's side. Who do you have winning it all? Who do you have as an upset? Who do you have as a sleeper? Let me know. Put in the comments. We'll talk about it. And until next time, much love.